My name is Barbara Tauber. My parents are Esther and Charlie Schneider. My grandparents are Alex and Sarah Yellen, Philip and Sylvia Schneider. My brother is Jeremy.
What year did you come? Did your parents come?
My grandparents came here, as best as I can figure, 1936. And I have two children who were born and grew up here, Matthew Levy and Jessica Levy, 26 and 21.
What she just said, I'm Jeremy Schneider. I have the same relatives she does.
There was a lot of
ever
funky business going
expanding. But also I have a wife Jody and a son Jake and another son Dylan, 5 and almost 2, and I hope that we will have more names forever to come. So that's who I am.
Gee, this is going to take a long time if we're all doing
Yeah,
that.
and I needed to leave 5 minutes ago.
All right, so go on.
Let me go because I have to go. Okay, Russell Gordon, Paul and Dottie, my parents. Grandparents were the Goldenbergs, Zimneys, Rita Sachs is a great aunt, Birnbaums, Golds.
Oh, I didn't do my aunt and uncle.
You'll get another chance. Daughter Elise, and I'm leaving out some relatives.
Wife Carol.
Wife
Wife
Carol.
Carol?
I'm just doing a map of the, I know I'm leaving out some relatives.
Okay.
Okay.
Someone here is related to them. They'll pick them up
Yeah,
later.
pick 'em up.
It's for the archives.
Eric Stan. My sister is Margot Stan, was Margot Stan, now she's Margie McNeil. And we were the children of Frida and Kurt Stand. Frida Halpern now. Her parents were Abe and Sophie Rottenberg, who had the house right across from the beach. My mother has a house next to theirs, well, was theirs. My grandfather was one of the original people who purchased the farm and used to go around trying to sell shares in the corporation, the original corporation. And my wife, Georgianne, and I have 2 sons, Theo and Paul, who call this place home, wherever they are.
I'm Carol Lewis. My grandmother was Rose Farmandown, who lived here for many, many years. I believe my grandmother came here in 1929. My parents are Abe and Selma. I had 2 sisters, Ellen and Nikki. I am the remaining member of the family to be present here at this time. I still have Grandma's house, which is how I think of it. What else?
And I'm John Saul, and this is my sister Jennifer Saul, and both my parents grew up in Goldsbridge, Shura Saul and Sidney Saul, Shura Cavanier, and my mother's uncle was with Eric's relatives, one of the original people who brought into the community, the Milstein family, and they had their house across from the farm, and my father's family, my father's family, Nathan Saul, came here also in 1932, 35. And I have 2 children, Joanna and Megan. Joanna's 23, Megan's 19, and we've been living here since 1969.
And what they call me Ginger Saul, but I'm really Jennifer Rose Valley. My husband and I moved here 15 years ago. I don't know what year that was, 1980 something. And we have 3 kids who grew up here. And I think we're cousins of yours, aren't we?
Through marriage.
Yeah,
Through marriage.
Divorce.
Yes,
marriage and divorce. Is somebody else? Oh, and we have a brother, Mark Saul, who has 3 kids who actually consider this also their home. He has 3 children, 21, 19, and 15. And we have 2 cousins, Larry and Jamie Saul, who grew up here, who don't live here. Jamie's in the city and Larry's in Long Island.
Mike Brown, son of Mel and Gloria Brown, and brother of Diane Lopafito Brown, Brown Lopafito. My grandparents were Izzy and Sadie Brown. They came here in 1951 with my parents and their daughter Ruth Dorfman and George Dorfman and their families. We all live together, and now I said since 1951, I believe, and I'm living here, coming back since then.
I'm Netta Schoenfeld, and I think I'm probably the newest member of the people sitting up here, having my parents having bought a house in 1965. But I thought I'd cash in on somebody else's really old roots, so I married Fred Margulies, and we raised my son Brandon here, as well as Fred having raised his two children here.
Fred Margulies, my grandparents came here in the 30s, I'm not sure, I think mid-30s. That was Oscar and Clara Ryder, and my whole family, the whole Ryder family was here when I was young, and our house eventually became my mother's and eventually burned down the day that Ronnie Dressler got married. And I think that I might have the record for having lived in most houses in the colony and lived in some people's houses here. And I later bought a house that my wife Anna, my ex-wife Anna, lives in, and I live still in the colony in another house, and I have two kids who are a daughter Jenny, who's 25, and Lars, who is almost 30.
Oh my God.
Jeremy Metz. My grandparents built the house here in the mid-30s, again, don't know when, but the original founders, they tried to move in earlier, but the original founders, your relatives, wouldn't let them.
They didn't want to sign the covenants, right?
I haven't signed the covenants for the house I have. That's another story.
Why is that, Jeremy?
I'll tell you later.
But really,
So you can't be here. You have to
I have to leave now. My grandfather owned a hardware store, and while he was a card-carrying member, had the temerity to have a worker. And because he had a worker and was living off the sweat of another man's brow, he could not be a member of this community. And he appeared before the board, and you could go back in the early 30s minutes, where they voted him down year after year until they finally let him in. They then went and bought a piece of property. They came back the next spring, and there was a house there. And they said, "This is wonderful. This place even builds you a house." They found out they sold the property twice. They didn't have such good records then, unlike today. And so they had to pick a different piece of property. I have a wife. Well, my grandparents had 3 daughters, Nina, Irene, and Lola. My mother, Lola Gottlieb, is now Lola Metz. Harold and Lola Metz also used this as a summer house, along with, at times, both of their, my aunts, with their kids. And we don't know how we all fit in the same house. There were only 4 bedrooms and 4 families, but somehow they say we were uncomfortable. We've all blocked that out. I have 3 children, Allison, Jordan, and Talia, a wife, Denise. We moved here 10 years ago. My mother, Lola, still has her family house here, and feel very much a part of this community, and I think my kids feel very much a part of this community, and I think that they are one of the generations that are going to continue. I know my daughter Allison, along with Elise, feel very connected to this place. I give a high likelihood that they may be continuing here for a while.
I always thought of Goodnight Irene was about your aunt. Yeah, somebody made it.
Has the events in the past 20 years, a kind of the fall of the Soviet Empire and the end of communism.
Don't tell my mother.
My father said about 2 or 3 years ago he still can't believe Stalin was wrong. It's just the timing of it. But seriously, has the changes in the world?
Jesse Ventura is the new reincarnation of Joseph Stalin.
Has the changes in the world had any effect at all on the essential spirit and quality and mystique of what this community was about?
Not for our generation, I don't think. I don't think we were locked into the idea of the Soviet model like a lot of the pioneers who came here. I think we might have been more in tune with the philosophy and the positive aspects, and not that they weren't, but we weren't locked into a leader, with a name, and we lived and died with his, reputation. I want to disagree with Johnny. I think it was a very unusual community, for me anyway, very unusual. First of all, it only came together 2 months a year. It was not a community in the sense that we all lived all year round together, and it was a full thing like that. The kids that I grew up with in the city were nothing like the kids that were here. They were into being bar mitzvahed, and all the social things that a nice Jewish boy from the city. Politics was verboten. You didn't talk, it just wasn't, God and politics were forbidden subjects. And here, it was a radical view of God and politics.
There was no God in the...
The same. It seems very clear. The day camp where we have our children, we have outsiders come, and I say outsiders, they don't live within the confines of the community. They make up a much greater proportion than they used to. If you look at folk dancing on Friday nights, which used to be a mob scene at the barn of only community people, now you have a majority of non-community people coming. You can get a seat anywhere you want on the beach at any time in the sun now, which I used to have to fight Pearl for all the time, at any time, because people don't come down only until the ice cream man comes. Volleyball, we didn't play volleyball at all this year until the week of the volleyball tournament, where people came from California to play. So that's a positive sign for the community, that people come back to do things. But it's a negative sign in that we don't have enough people who seem to be as focused on the social aspects of the beach, of the barn, during the day for kids, the day camp, and at night for social activities. You used to have the Tuesday night book club, the forums, used to have the folk dance, and every Saturday night was a very well-attended function. Now we have to struggle to get attended functions, and never every Saturday night. There's a dark night, there's a beach here, it's very different. Now, I'm not sure why that is, but it's a reality that we can't just ignore.
But on the other hand,
we're no longer dependent on the community only. We all used to come here. Our parents came here. It was like sort of a grown-up summer camp, very intense. All the activities took place here. You're no longer dependent on that, partially for all the reasons Dan outlined. Houses are more comfortable.
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning. We have, well, that never stopped the dancing, but we have more comfortable places to be in a wider variety of choices.
Right. Well, there were a lot of politics surrounding us, and I guess we were fringely aware of what was going on. I remember the SNCC rally at the ball field and the raising of the money for the buses, and we raised money after the 3 civil rights workers were murdered in Mississippi, and
used to raise money for Eddie.
that's right.
we raised money for Eddie,
And the FBI people coming to your house?
I remember on the ball field when we had that rally that these paramilitary people showed up watching us, and
I'll never forget that his father gave an incredibly large donation at that time.
Well, that was over at the Gold House.
No, that was on the ball field, the SNCC rally. I'll never forget that.
Your father pulled out of his pocket $200.
Yep. It was like an enormous...
30 years ago.
That was a lot of money.
Yeah. And that was very, very...
I don't even remember that one. I remember he pulled out $100 for to buy an entire bus, to sponsor a bus to go to Mississippi.
That was different. Separate.
But I think that is what made this community really special. I mean, we didn't get here until 1965, but
Wait.
I know, that makes me a newcomer. They weren't guarding the doors one day.
Johnny's grandfather.
But I think that our parents were so proud of their political involvement, and I was raised, I think we all were, in a way that was very insulated. Even in the city, my parents were very involved in politics, but up here there was this commonality of political understanding. And I'll never forget that when I was 15, I went on a Western trip with Well-Met Camp, some Jewish organization, and one of the stops was at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. And we went in, and after one particular exhibit, I was so mortified. First I tried to argue with the docent, and then I gave up, and I just burst into tears, and I ran out, and I called my parents on the phone, and I said, "You're not going to believe this, but they think the Rosenbergs were guilty." And my father just laughed. He said, "Sweetheart, most of the world feels that way." And it was a real moment of reality hitting me in the face. And wow, the whole world is not like the way I was raised. That was really scary.
I just also, I disagree with Johnny. I think that this community was exceptional. And there might be other communities like it, but I think it's rare that a community is formed around something. I think most communities just, come into existence, because two rivers meet or something, But I think that made this place special, and I think that I was fortunate enough to be born here, and I think I was just born into that great place. And I remember when I was young, watching the board meetings, and I look up on the balcony, and I see these kids now up on the balcony. It just is, it's always a flashback. And I mean, sadly, I think I was sort of watching more interesting things in that time. But it was these European people forcefully arguing stuff, which I didn't even know what was going on, I think, most of the time, but it was just it was dramatic. And I think I was immersed in that stuff. And I think that later on, when I finally thought about it and had to sort of rationalize my life to other people, to myself, I think I was very lucky, and I think that the stuff that we were all brought up with was the avant-garde, in terms of civil rights, and a lot of political stuff. So I think we were fortunate, and I think I was very lucky to be in this place, and I think it was a great place to be brought up. And as opposed to that, just on the other side, I think that my kids who were brought up here also, the way I describe it is I think I was a Goldensbridge kid, and they're Lewisboro kids. Mm-hmm. And it's very different. I think that they have, by osmosis, a lot of the good stuff. But it's just, a completely different quality to what they see.
I see, for Elise, who has Allison as her best friend here, it still is that very special, safe place you're talking about. She can just go out and we know where she is, and she jokes to Carol that, Mom, I know more people around here than you do. She feels very plugged in. That's true. And, with the camp, and she helped out this year. So, I see that sense of connectedness still exists.
I would say more on a political kind of sense, on a social kind of level, I think, which the place that...
Well, see, for my family, the politics was always, leave them alone, they're crazy. Those who remember my grandfather, it's like, and so that filtered down, and so the political connection was never the big deal for us.
The thing that is very different, at least on a personal experience for me, was the connection that I had with my intimate group of 50 friends. And I'm serious, that within, they don't have that now. The kids don't have that now. They may have one friend in the community, but they don't, everybody, you had it also, everybody just connected with, these were the kids that you were here, and you fit in. There was a place to fit in, and that was what was different about here as opposed to the city or any other community, probably.
There was an intensity of being here for 2 months or 2.5 months that is not the case anymore for your kids, nor was it for my kids. Right. They were children of Lewisboro, not so much the colony. I could walk around and always be, you know, yelling Zanico. But they're not. You know, more people know them, know my children, than my children know in reverse, unlike Elise.
But I don't know if your group, you were a little older than me, I don't know if your group had gotten together in the city. I don't know. Our group got together in the city.
No.
We saw each other all year round,
that's right.
always. We were each other's friends
Okay.
because we fit in together.
We did not.
Whereas
Different for our.
it was, huh?
I think it's very different. You talk about like in the last 20 years because it's the Soviets or not the Soviets. I think two things have changed. One, now most people live here all year round. The houses are occupied for the full year. 20, 30, 40, 60 years ago, they were not. There were only a few people who lived here all year round, and they were like, whoa, they lived here in the wintertime. That was very different. So the intensity of being here for 2.5 months, you always had the same sense of social with friends for that time, but we didn't really, at least in the a little bit older group, we didn't maintain that friendship outside. So when you were here, it was a wonderful time. Also, I think just a sense of politics is not the same now as it was 20, 30, 40, 60 years ago. Before, the people came here not just to have a country home, they came here to have a country home with a left-wing outlook on the world. And they did things in support of that left-wing outlook. Now people come here for whatever reason because it's only an hour away from the city, it's wonderful land. And you have people here who don't, we feel we have to introduce them to the colony. We have to hand out handbooks so they know what it's like to be here. So they're coming here for other reasons first, and then maybe they'll decide if they like what we think, what we feel, what we strive for.
What we think we stand for.
Right, or what we used to stand for, you know. And I don't
Yeah, I
think
think
it's
it's a really used to. I think anybody really thinks that this colony
Are you saying,
really
what do we stand
represents
for?
anything
Yeah.
now.
Does it?
Other than a
I
community.
think it's a tiny enclave that still exists, that maybe think the same way, that it's still the same, but it's not the same. It's almost, now it's more like every community in Westchester where, you know, it's a real homogenized of all different types and beliefs and everything. And
It is, but it isn't.
Right.
It is,
We
but it
may
isn't.
not be what we were 40 years ago, but we're not like the surrounding area either.
We're all sitting here. I mean, that in and of itself speaks of
well, we'll let
something.
though. I mean, we're starting.